Welcome to Prep My Art and Prep My Art Academy. We are so happy to have you joining with us today. And we have an awesome guest. We have my friend here, Will, who is a percussionist. Will, tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is Will Angliss. I'm currently a graduate student at Oakland University. I'm a graduate research assistant in percussion outreach, and I recently just got accepted into the World Percussion Committee as a member for the Percussive Art Society. So I'm looking forward to seeing what I do there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. As you can hear, there's lots of incredible opportunities for percussionists available. And it sounds like you have a pretty diversified portfolio going on.
I wouldn't have discovered any of this really until I came to university, because there is this big world of percussion that does exist out there. Everything that I kind of have behind me has its own tradition that goes back at the very least 100 years. The drum kit's at the very least 100 years old, tabla's 400 years old, and the jill, debatable, it's about 1,000 years old. Yeah, we don't
Wow.
quite know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But there's a whole world of percussion traditions out there. Each one people study their entire lives. That you keep going more and more and more in depth, and you can never actually stop learning with every one of them individually. And I didn't really discover any of these until I came to university for the first time, and somebody showed me that they existed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Will, what's our topic we're going to share with everybody today?
I wouldn't mind discussing a little bit about how music is taught and how music is like conceived in not only like the professional world, but kind of just in general. It's a big topic.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
do it. This is good.
Yeah, but it's an important one, and it's one that I kind of quite didn't realize how important it was until it was like a slow awakening almost. Where when I first came to studying music really heavily, I didn't quite know a lot. I could say that I was at the top of my Dunning-Kruger curve, if you know what that is. When you're really, really confident about something, it's usually because you don't know anything about it, right? So I came in, I was really confident about music because I didn't know anything. And I gave it maybe a semester, and my confidence absolutely plummeted because I really kind of figured out exactly what I was getting into. And that was just for something like jazz. That just for one genre that was that deep, and it was American. It was a genre that we all listen to music that comes from jazz. It's like it, and that kind of shocked me how deep that was. And it almost kind of feels like you continue opening up doors the more that you look into different traditions, but it all comes back to how we perceive music as well. When you ask someone what they think of when they think of music, they're probably going to give you wildly different answers depending on what their background is. But the general, universal definition of what music is kind of hard to like pin or to track. But the easiest way to really do it is it's an auditory form of expression. I think that's the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, that's really good.
And that opens up the doors for many things. Language could be a form of music because it's an auditory form of expression. So language and music can be synonymous with how we perceive them. Language conveys semantic meaning, while music conveys metaphorical meaning. And that's not just me. Leonard Bernstein also said that in his, he had a bunch of really famous lectures that he would give to young people's concerts. And that's a really famous quote that he said that stuck with me for a long time. I don't study a lot of Western contemporary or classical music, but that's very powerful coming from a man who does. And in the West, sometimes we don't really see that larger connection with music and language. We kind of see them as two very separate things. We can put language inside of music, but music is different than that. But that's not quite how it is everywhere around the world. Music and language and forms of auditory expression are incredibly varied. For instance, I have right behind me 3 different ways of representing music percussively, and they all incorporate language in different ways. Let's say for a drum set, you can incorporate language, which is kind of how we get our swing pattern. If we actually analyze how English works rhythmically, we actually see that there's a swing in the rhythm. 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 That's kind of where we think that we got the origins of jazz swing from. We can take all these speech patterns that we have in English and turn them into rhythms on the drum kit, and turn them into rhythms on the drum kit. And now they're fills or different grooves. It's a direct kind of translation from the rhythms of our speech to rhythms represented in music. With tabla, it's done even more directly. There's a literal language that you speak with tabla. We call it, in Hindustani music, we call it like bowls, where if I speak a composition on tabla, if I do something like small, like dotty dotty da da dikita nati nati da da dikita da, I can play that note for note on the instrument. Dotty dotty da da dikita nati dani da da dikita da. Or on the jill, where literally words will translate two notes on the jill, and sometimes it will be syllable to syllable. And your jill player will improvise on top of that, where it almost feels like your jill player is kind of breaking that boundary that language has. You can't really improvise artistically on language that you speak that much, but with the jill and with that style of music, it's expected. But if we were to ask, say, a contemporary classical musician who's maybe never had experience improvising to improvise over something, or to play over like chords or something, because they don't have the background, because they've never really kind of experienced that, they wouldn't be able to do it.
It is very hard. I've been in classes, especially when I was a college student. It blew my mind because I learned, ever since I was 12, how to play with a chord chart and how to improvise. And that was good that I did that before I was really getting strong classically, because a lot of my professors and people who are, very, very good at classical repertoire and following the notes, you take it away and you say, oh, you get to play now, just improvise, just make it up. It's like,
they don't know what to do.
It's very, very weird.
Yeah,
a lot of people
absolutely.
have a hard time learning how to play.
When I came here and started studying music for real, that was pushed on me heavily, was improvisation, because I was in jazz combos, I did African ensemble, and that's tied into African music. I did not a lot of steel band, but I've been exploring steel band music for a semester because I inched my way into it, and now I love playing drum set for steel bands. But inching my way into these things, in every ensemble I was in, every jazz ensemble, every improv ensemble or something like that, I was asked to improvise, and it was expected. I'm like, okay, all right, so this just must be what the norm is. This must be what the expectation is for a professional musician. You must be able to go out and improvise. And when I would talk to other students who were studying actual degrees at the university, because my bachelor's wasn't in music, my master's is, but my bachelor's is actually in a foreign language, it's in Japanese.
Wow.
Yeah. But I thought that was the baseline expectation, was that you should be able to improvise over it, because that's how you speak the language of music. If music is a metaphorical language, we should be able to speak it. And that's a fundamental skill. It's kind of part of being a musician. It's very closely tied to being human. There's a researcher in Africa, his name's Kofi Agawu. He's probably the greatest face of musicology, or global musicology. We don't even really call it ethnomusicology anymore, because it brings an exoticization of other people's music. Even Kofi Agawu will state that there's three things that are incredibly tied into being human, and that's religion, that's language, and that's music. And every society around the world has some form of all three. It's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to find one that doesn't have one. It's still core to being a person, is being able to navigate through these three things. So I think being able to speak your native language and speaking the language of music is helpful to kind of being a full-rounded musician, or even a person as a whole. I don't want to disparage people who aren't in music, but art is a way, it's just some form of creative expression. That's absolutely tied into being human. I think that's important. But being able to speak that language of expression and improv is incredibly important for a musician. So when I would talk to colleagues or other students, and they would tell me that they're not working on any of that, that they've went through kind of their whole degree, and maybe they were in a jazz combo once, or they jumped into a global music ensemble for a perspective credit or something, and that was their first intro to improvisation, and they've been playing music for years and years, possibly even their whole lives. That kind of surprised me. I think it's kind of fundamental to being able to play music, is being able to speak music and improvising music. Yeah, that should absolutely be taught more in schools, and I think it is. In U of M right now, there's a professor, his name is Ed Sereth. His role is actually, I think his role is the chair, or the professor of improvisation. And he released several different like articles and publications, and I'm currently studying a textbook that he wrote too of teaching music theory through improvisation. So here's like a music theory concept. Like, let's say you've never improvised like at all, and you've never studied music theory, but maybe you've went through school, through like high school, and you've kind of learned how to read music, but you've never learned how to go any deeper. This kind of teaches you how to mess with things like non-syntactic elements, like depth, like how well or like how dense you'll make a piece of music, density in notes, clarity of notes. You'll have maybe slower music, faster music, you're messing with tempos, you're messing with dynamics. And then it'll slowly keep branching up. It's like now you're messing with intervals and scales. And then it'll keep going up. It's like, okay, now you're playing with chords, and now you're playing with functional harmony. And by that point, you should be pretty familiar with how to express yourself and improvise yourself on your instrument. I really think that's the direction that music should head in. I think anyone who's being taught music should know how to speak it.
I think that there is a lot of value to that. I think that, so that was actually my first music theory classes, that we had a professor come in and teach that way.
Oh, cool.
And
okay.
It crashed and burned.
Oh, did it?
It was not good at all.
Man, what was it like? People's reception? Was it like?
It was bad because we weren't actually getting the fundamentals. So all the classical things like the counterpoint, understanding the fundamentals of that we needed for our exams, for our ear training, for being able just to look at rhythm and to be able to conduct and tap and ta and all the things we had to do, and singing solfege, we're all, we didn't have time for both. So
he put them on the same playing, like...
Yeah. So I think if there was a music theory improv course or a course track, that would need to be for sure separate.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Or even if you just dedicate on the clock, like the last 10 minutes of class, we're going to do that. Or, hey, come to class 15 minutes early and we'll do that. That would be good. I think you have to keep the structure, though, because otherwise it was just a very difficult experience for the whole college when that professor was around.
No, absolutely. That makes sense.
Great guy. Fantastic guy. Very nice teacher. You know, as a person, it was great. It was just very difficult as a student to walk in and to follow so much freedom. I mean, I did, but I wasn't then passing my counterpoint and all my other things, so I had to like take 2 more semesters in the summer of making up what I didn't get in the school year.
It's important if you're studying a musical tradition, like to be able to understand the intricacies and to be incredibly fluent in that musical tradition, whether or not that's like classical Western music or it's Jill or tabla or anything like that. You have to know how it works, and if a professor like ignores those fundamental concepts and tries to present something else, that's just not fair. And that can kind of lead to something like a distaste in, say, improvisation or kind of pursuing that because it was presented to you in a manner that kind of made it feel conflicting with something that you already love. And that's totally not fair.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not what it's about,
like,
you know?
It's like a balanced diet. Like, you have to have the balance, right?
Absolutely.
As a musician, you have to be very, very balanced with working on the fundamentals. You have to be consistent with it. But you have to have playtime. You've got to have that time where you can relax in your music and let go. And I think that there's a lot of value with what you're saying about having that come in, not being like what's front, but not it being separated either. You know, making it like you've got your fruits and you've got your vegetables, you've got your protein, you've got your carbs, you got to have all the things to make it healthy.
Yeah. You're learning the specifics. You came there for a reason. It wouldn't be fair to kind of push another like agenda on top of that. And they are completely different things. A lot of the things that come from improvisation right now came from the era of free jazz. It came from the studies of John Coltrane, from Ornette Coleman, probably a few others I can't name right. Sun Ra was a good one. They came from like the studies and the philosophies of these people, and it's a totally different kind of music. It might use like similar instruments or like the same instruments in some cases, but it's a different tradition. This tradition just happens to be a little more centered on using music and using, say, even music theory as a tool for direct improvisational expression. If we think about it, what's the difference between composition and improvisation? It's just the amount of time spent thinking on it. You're doing the same act. When you compose, you're probably, hopefully, audiating in your mind, right?
Yeah.
You're probably hopefully not just composing notes in a scale. It's like, this will sound good when I play it. Yeah, I'll figure it out. No, you hopefully hear maybe a little something in your mind to use that as inspiration or something. But you're really doing the same thing when you improvise and when you compose. When you improvise on stage, let's say you're doing it over a jazz standard or something. You're kind of thinking, but not really thinking about the notes that you're playing. You're kind of thinking, but not really thinking about what scales are acceptable. You have enough experience with that song and with those patterns to where you're kind of relying back on this language. It's also a mix of like tradition and improvisation, because you need to play the traditional piece. In jazz, let's say you're playing Donna Lee. You need to play like the intro to Donna Lee. If you play the intro to Donna Lee wrong, same piece. It's just wrong. But whatever you do for the improv section, whatever notes you choose over the keys, that's all freedom. You're free to do that. And that was even before the era of free jazz, where they just decided, okay, how much further can we kind of push this concept? But they're still composing and improvising, and it's kind of two sides of the same coin. And I think it'd be important, even though like bringing free jazz traditions and practices to like a classical background is, if you don't mix them together well, if you don't like present it in the right way, it's going to seem like it's conflicting. But a lot of things that you teach in, say, jazz or improv can be directly applied to the classical, even in the era, or not the era, but in the era of composition. Because that's how you learn how to compose.
How are you going to discover something if you don't improvise?
Yeah, even if you don't improvise
even
directly
if you have a
behind
box
your
of
instrument.
rules, like counterpoint to follow, what can you do and how can you do it? Applying those rules to being creative.
Yeah, that's really what it is taking your toolbox and it's trying to use that to figure out how to express yourself. That's a big thing that deters maybe even students from learning theory. I'll see this a lot, and I saw it a lot when I was learning music for the first time, of students just kind of complaining about like learning music theory, and like it was just, oh, I'm never going to use this, I just want to play the music. It's like, you kind of listen to the point. You don't learn music theory to like understand what the rules are. It's like, okay, here are the rules, you must obey the rules. That's not how that works. Music theory is just a tool for analysis. It shows you what is. This is what this person did. This is why it sounds good. And you can spend all the time in the world figuring out like how good something sounds by sitting in a room with a piano or a guitar or something and busting it out. But people have been trying to do it for a little over, I don't know, what's the origin of Western harmonies, like Gregorian chant music, right? Like 1600s or something. Yeah, so people have been figuring that out for like 500 years. Yeah.
Is there something you'd like to play for us? Would you like to show us how you have a structure and then how you can improvise?
Yeah, I could do that on a couple instruments to show you the differences between like composition and improv when it comes to different cultures. Because each instrument here will have a different way that they compose and a different way that they'll improvise on top of it too. And it's still freedom of expression, but each one does have its own set of traditional rules. So I can demonstrate that for you for, I can do it for 3 instruments.
All right, let's do it.
A good example of improvisation, say on the Jill, which is I'm totally unbiased, it's my favorite instrument, is in their recreational music. We call it Bewa. At least for the Dagara people, their recreational music is called Bewa. And its structure is it's like call and response, but it's also like song and solo and song and solo and song and solo. And you have like an accompanying part as well for this. And they'll continue to play this music for, some of them have set repertoire that they'll run through every time, like the Sakamu Dance Troupe. They have set repertoire that they run through every time for Bewa. And then there's some groups that will improvise Bewa, and they'll just play it for as long as they kind of feel like playing it until somebody decides to end. So I can demonstrate for you song and improvisation within it, and then how a solo would work, and I can end it on this instrument. So we'll start out with a simple melody in Bewa. We'll have a... So that's the melody right there. And I can make small variations on it. I can maybe change the rhythms here. I can maybe use it to go into a rhythmic motif or ostinato and keep that going. And I improvise a lot with my left hand as well. I'm hitting A keys and B keys. It's almost as if we have two separate tonalities on the Jill. Like let's say you're switching between two different chords on a guitar or a piano or vibraphone or whatever. It's kind of what's going on here. We have bichordal music that we switch between. So my left hand will always hit things on either A or B when I'm playing A or B. And so I'll improvise over the melody that I just played a little bit, and then I'll end it for you. So if we have a
Woo! Good job.
And every instrument treats improvisation differently. And they all have ways to where you can put yourself into the music and where you can speak the language of music. That's how we would improvise with Jill. We can take this to another instrument that I deeply love, the tabla. I would like to show you kind of how a small composition, would work on tabla, and then how we improvise on that. So I can show that to you in the form of probably one of the simpler compositions. We call it a kaida. And we use baby powder to slide. We have our ta 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 ta. Yeah. So we can take a composition that we'll call a kaida. Let's say I've known this one for a while. We'll do a da. That's the first half. Second half we'll go. So the whole composition, it goes 16 beats. We'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 16, and then it repeats. So we'll have. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. So we'll have 16 beats that we play through. So now we can take different lines of this composition since we can speak them all. We can say so we can take one of these lines. Let's say we want to double it. This is our room for improvisation. We take different rhythms inside of our kaida, or we take different bols, or the spoken words, and we'll double them, or we'll triple them, or we'll take a line and we'll add another line to it, or we'll separate it out by a certain number of beats. And let's say I double the first line. Let's say I double. So we can also take any of these rhythms and we can double them or triple them, or we can improvise something on top of it. But what we're doing is we're reciting poetry rhythmically. I have a poem, and the poem is and I want to rhyme it on the other half. I want to rhyme it in different places. I want to make it sound like a rhythmic poem. That's my goal. So I'll do one more variation. We'll try changing up something, try split a rhythm in half. So now we'll try going let's see if I can double that and put that into the composition, and that's where improvisation comes in. So we'll have that's how we'll show. We have other ways of showing improvisation on tabla too, but that's one of the most popular ones, and that's most students' like first introduction to improvising on this instrument. And now we can take this over to the drum kit, which is the instrument that most people will be familiar with how kind of improvising works on it. Now we can see how improvising works on drum set, and we'll do it under the lens of jazz drumming too, because we can kind of compare these different traditions, and they all have something fundamental with improvisation in all of them. With jazz, it almost seems like you have your set composition. You have what someone wrote, especially in bebop. This is big in bebop. You'll have a set composition. You have like your head, the head of the tune, and then you have your solos, and then your different members of your group will start soloing one after the other, or maybe they'll solo together. Sometimes it's planned out, sometimes it's fully improvised. That's the beauty of it. And by the end, most of the time they'll tag the head again, which means that they'll play the top of the tune again, and then they'll end. But that a section in the middle where there's soloing, the drum kit actually will sometimes have something special going on. The drum kit will either take like an entire chorus, or they'll take a section, or they'll trade fours, or they'll trade four measures, or they'll trade certain numbers of measures with other musicians, and then they'll go back to the top of the tune. So I think a good way that I can describe that or show that would be just doing a small jazz drum solo. I'll play 12 bars of a really simple groove, just like our 12-bar blues, and I'll play a small improvised solo on top of it, and then I'll go back to that original head, and then I'll end. So I'll basically improvise a jazz tune. So I'll do a little intro, go into it, and hope you enjoy. How about
Yay!
so I
That's
started.
so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I started with a 12-bar blues. I had a small accent pattern to kind of make a groove. My improvisation was in my solo, and I use a lot of what we call like solo vocabulary, because that's really what I'm doing is I'm reciting some of the musical vocabulary that I know and putting it in an artistic manner. A lot of what I do, yes, it's improvised, but improvisation is, as we've seen with the previous two instruments, it's a very loaded term. There's a lot of things that we think of when we think of improvisation. We can think of something entirely free, or it can be structured. In this case, it felt like it was both. In the solo, I used a lot of vocabulary, so a lot of I used a lot of six-lit grooves, which will go right, left, right, left, right. So I'll use a lot. I use a lot of five-stroke roll. I'll go. There's a lot of different jazz vocabulary that I'm using for my solo. It's where it sounds and looks like I'm kind of going crazy and not quite thinking about what I'm doing. In reality, these vocabulary terms or these ways of playing are so ingrained because they're embodied in me, because I've spent all this time studying and playing them that I no longer think about them. They're now embodied movements. I'm using this vocabulary to express myself on the instrument. And that's a great way that we can kind of see how improvisation works with different instruments, is that every instrument in every culture that it comes from has their own rules or appropriate ways of interacting with the music.
Wow, Will, you really gave us quite a performance today. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of information, showing us the different instruments and how you can take structure and then be playful and improvise. It was really great to hear you today.
Thank you. I love doing this stuff. I've been doing this for about 6 years. A lot of what I do and what I study feels kind of normal for me at this point, and sometimes I have to realize that it is not quite that it is normal, but it's not normal for us over here. It's normal for people in Africa. It's very normal for people in India and Pakistan. That stretches all the way up to Afghanistan, all of those. Yeah, drum kit's normal for people all over the world. Improvisation, for some reason, for a lot of students and for even some professionals, is just not quite seen as normal, and I wouldn't mind for that to eventually change. I think everybody should have the opportunity to be able to express themselves in music freely. I think that's the beautiful part of it. If you ever feel like that feeling when you're playing a beautiful piece of music that you know really well and you study, you're not thinking about really what you're playing, you're just enjoying kind of being in the moment. And being able to create music while simultaneously enjoying being in the moment too is an incredibly freeing experience.
Yeah, it is. It's like, what's it called, being in the zone?
It's totally
You're
being in the
just
zone.
like so focused, so engaged, and you just love it so much. And it's just like electricity in yourself. It's like a great moment. Sometimes it can be hard to stay focused through that after like you get so far. But when you have that moment and you have that time, whether moments, now we're on stage or whatever, it's really special. It's a great part of being a community. I hope that all of you really enjoyed, everything you heard today, everything you learned, and your experience on your instrument as well. Well, we'll see you next time. Bye.